Hey guys, welcome back to the Art and Business of Writing podcast. I'm your host, Chris Jones, and with me is my co-host, Kayla Thomas, and it's exciting to be back with you guys for another episode. The excitement of 2017 is kind of knocking at the door, and I hope we can all take time between now and then to really reflect on some of the accomplishments that we had in 2016, which is still not over, so we can still accomplish these goals. But what was the one thing that you were the most proud of in terms of your accomplishments for 2016?
Probably branching out and writing a novel that was kind of outside of my comfort zone. I was invited to write in a Kindle World, and the author that invited me writes thrillers and police procedural books, and I've always just been kind of a straight up romance, women's fiction lady up until now. But I decided to take her invitation and write a thriller, which was really fun for me, but it was a lot of work and a huge learning curve.
Ooh, fun. So you talk about breaking comfort zones. I love that.
So I'm really proud for getting that done. It took a lot longer than I had hoped it would, but I came out a much stronger writer on the other side.
Yeah, and I think that's part of writing is just, in order to begin writing, you do have to break comfort zones to even start.
Yeah, for sure. So what about you, Chris? Did you have anything that you're proud of for 2016?
Ironically, I did.
Well, I hope so.
Well, the irony is this, I got fired from my job this year, right in the beginning of spring. I mean, I remember the date. It was March to 23rd. I remember like it was yesterday. But the funny thing was that all year long, up until that point, I'd kept a resignation letter in my desk that was dated June 30th. And I told myself that, my big goal of the year was that I wanted to be out of my job by June 30th. And so when it happened, hey, it was kind of one of those happy accidents, I'd say. The God's timing was completely different than mine. I guess he had more faith that I could hit the ground running. But it really proved to me that I could do a lot of really good writing and leverage a lot of the networks that I've already built doing. So I'm excited that I lost my job. Our topic today is how to publish your first book in 6 months or less. Really creating that goal that takes you into 2017 to get you ready to publish a book, sometime during the course of the year within that first 6 months. And it seems like every year we go into the year with big dreams and we end up on the short end of the stick. A lot of that comes from not building a realistic plan around our goals, or from simply just not planning at all.
Yep.
We have a great goal, but if we don't lay out action steps and a timetable to achieve it, then the goalposts of life keep moving, things happen. And I think many of our listeners may want to write their first novel or their first nonfiction book in 2017. But before we dig in and really talk about how to publish that first book in 6 months or less, let's share some of our own experiences with goals and writing. So what's been one of your biggest goals for next year?
Well, you're saying one, but I'm going to lump it into two, and I'm also going to give you a word. I learned that several years ago, I read an article in Guidepost by Debbie Macomber. She's a women's fiction author, and she always gives herself a word for the year for some way that she wants to grow. Some people will say faith or strength or different things. I've had various ones. So this year, my word is discipline, because I feel like in 2016, I was a little bit all over the place and didn't get done a lot of some of the things I wanted to get done. So I need to really buckle down in 2017. So my goal is to publish 3 novels, and that is counting one that I have about a quarter of the way drafted already. So that's helping me. I'm starting with a padded front end. And on a personal level, I want to be able to swim a mile in one workout. So what about you, Chris?
I want to be able to publish 3 ebooks, and which, when I talk about ebooks, I'm talking about books that are about, between 10 and 20,000 words at length, about 45 pages long. I want to be able to help 10 people publish their books or stories in publications through a curriculum. I've been working on a curriculum for the better part of a year off and on, so I really want to finish that now and then be able to use that to help others. And then I want to break into writing for some national publications. I've done a lot with local publications and regional publications and online stuff, but I really want to find my first national byline. So I'm after that next year. And my
That's exciting.
word, yeah, and I think my word for the year is just add value. And I think a lot of the things that I want to accomplish come from adding value, just giving people the most value.
That's great. That is super exciting. And I guess I should clarify when I was talking about my books, I'm talking about novels. So I have a couple of adult novels planned and a juvenile fiction one, which that one will be a little bit shorter than the adult one. So
Fun, fun. That's the writing life, yeah. Let's segue into, what our listeners are here for, which is, how do I set an achievable writing goal? A lot of new authors are going to jump on this year. They're going to want to learn how to write their books. How do we structure it in such a way so that they have achievable goals and milestones for the course of the year?
okay, well, I can talk to the novel writing part of it, and I'm guessing some of the approaches to that are pretty similar to writing nonfiction. I like to work backwards, and so I say, okay, I want to write and publish a book in 6 months. And so the first step would be figuring out about how long you want your book to be. So my books, I usually set a loose goal of 65,000 to 70,000 words. It could be a little more or a little less in there, but that gives you kind of an end goal. And then I look at when I want to publish. So then I count backwards, kind of figure out how much I need to write per day. And I don't always have a daily word count. It kind of averages out for me. There'll be huge days and then there'll be light days. And I have to be realistic with that. But some people actually need to say, okay, I'm going to write 1,000 words a day no matter what. So if you say you're going to write 1,000 words a day as your pace, then, times that by 30, and because the average month has 30 days. So you would get finished with the first draft in about 2.5 months would be at that pace. And so, and when I'm talking first draft, I like to call them the quick and dirty first draft because you're writing fast. It's messy. You're not worrying about typos and things. You're just getting the story in place. And you'll make better time if you do it that way. The temptation to edit is real, and I fall into that trap. So really try hard not to unless you realize you have a big flaw in your story, which that's happened. And then I have to go back and fix it, and it takes longer. So then once that first draft is finished, I do my first round edits, which are the edits I do myself. And I print out the whole manuscript, and I take a red pen, and I give myself about 2 weeks to do those edits where I'm reading through, I'm scribbling and hashing and rewriting things. And so if you check point right there, you're at about the 3-month mark by the time you finish your first round edits. So then you need to account for the beta reading time. Beta readers are the people that I give. Pretty much it's my second draft. It's what's there after I've done that first round of edits to clean things up and tighten it up. And I choose them very carefully because I've had some that were not very good ones and I could sort out why. And so ideally you need people who love to read and read a lot so they kind of understand the market. So I'm talking fiction market right now. But it would probably work in nonfiction as well. So they understand what's out there and self-published and regularly. They have a good feel and they read fast. And I like to stick to people for the most part who understand the genre, because if you don't understand the genre, things aren't going to make sense to you, whether it's the pacing or things that happen or, some people just don't get it. And it can be really frustrating for them and for you if they don't understand what you're trying to do. I usually give my beta readers 2 to 3 weeks to read, and I ask them not to edit it like for typos and stuff, because what happens is I'm looking for plot holes and are my characters believable and consistent? Like my first beta readers on my first novel pointed out that my main male character's eyes, he kept changing colored eyes, and it was not a paranormal book. It was just me forgetting what color his eyes were and learning that I needed to have a character dossier, but we'll talk about something like that later. So anyway, so they're looking for some of those inconsistencies, and it's not worth looking for typos and things at that point because I will end up rewriting entire chapters and things to make the story work. So there's no point fixing the little stuff if you're moving around the big rocks. So after they're done, I give myself a week to take their notes, and I give them a deadline. If people don't have it done by that deadline, I move on without them. Not to be a jerk, but I'm on a timeline to get this out because this is a job. So I give myself about a week to use their notes to fix anything, and then I will ship it to my editor. And I have a professional editor, and I get on her calendar. Some editors will require that you get on their calendar months in advance because they're that in demand, and that can make your deadline, change your working deadline just like that to hit theirs. But mine's fairly flexible. And she'll have my book for generally about a month, which is kind of long for some editors, but I love her and she has a family, and so I just plan her into my schedule. I know that she needs it for a month, so that's just what I set aside for her. So then, and I just wanted to note, because where some people are saying, well, how in the world are you going to publish 3 books in a year on this kind of timeline? But while beta readers have my work, or while the editor has my work, I'm drafting another book.
Ooh, smart.
During that time.
Very smart.
Yeah, so I'm always working on something new. So while one manuscript is out of my hands, another manuscript is being created. So that's how I'm going to, be able to do both of those things at the same time. And I'm also doing things like, once the beta readers have the book, I'll start writing my description for the back. And so those things, there's several wheels that are turning at the same time to make sure that things are just constantly in motion to get the next thing back. So then once my editor gets it back to me, I'll usually give myself 1 week to do any rewrites and fix any things that she needed fixed. I mean, I've had some things fall apart and it took longer than that, but on average. So by the time you get to the end of the beta phase, you're at 4 months. And then by the time I'm at the end of my editor, I think we're probably around 5 months. And I guess I lied. I give myself 2 weeks to review and make her changes. I thought I was Superwoman there for a second. But then you also need to consider formatting and things. And I'm sure you have to do that for nonfiction as well.
Yeah, you do.
And yeah, ebook formatting is super easy, especially if you're using Scrivener. And so I can format an ebook and have it uploaded onto Amazon in usually less than an hour.
Ooh.
And it's super easy. But if you are going to do a paperback, I've formatted my own before and they just kind of turned out meh, but I hired a formatter for my last paperback project and it was beautiful. So I will probably always use a formatter outside of myself for the paperbacks. And then you got to allow time for that. So it depends on how popular the person is and how long they take. So you got to allow a couple weeks for that. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my rough layout for those things.
Yeah. Well, let's unpack some of that because there's so many good things that you talked about in there. I mean, first, we talked about just putting that 6-month timeline together. So that, I mean, all that goes on within 6 months, just setting the word count, figuring out when you want to publish and kind of working backwards from there. But for new writers, definitely just the discipline of the word count, I don't think we can stress that enough. Taking the time to figure out how much you can actually write in the course of a day. Or if you can't write a certain amount every day, being able to set aside time on your weekends to make sure that you keep within your pace. Because I know I've had to write a lot in the weekends. I've had to write wherever I was, whether that was at my in-laws' house or whether that was, at an amusement park while my kids were on a ride. You just have to write where you can get those words in because you have to stay at a deadline.
Right, for sure. And that's probably the biggest part is getting the first draft done. I feel like the editing part is, for me, pretty easy and quick. So the hardest part is getting that initial story out.
Yeah, get it all out of your head. Because we talked, the temptation to edit. We want the first draft to be perfection. We don't want to fail. We don't want to look like amateurs when we write our first draft. But the truth of the matter is, what did Hemingway say? Hemingway said the first draft is all shit. The first one, all of them. And so you've got to be able to look at the first draft and say, hey, this is going to be a terrible, terrible first draft. Let me just get it out of my head and have it done.
Anne Lamott calls it the shitty first draft.
Yeah, everyone says that.
And now we're explicit.
Now we're explicit. I know. Oh no, the first time in, ever. But it's the truth though. All things being real, you have to get that first draft out and you have to be okay with being uncomfortable without having a polished written manuscript. Just let it all out of your head.
Terry Pratchett, he died this last year, but he is an amazing writer who wrote a lot of books, and he just says the first draft is you telling yourself the story.
Yes, that's it. What they say, write the first draft with the door closed and then the second with the door open. So, then after the first round, then you can have the free reign to edit. But I love Stephen King. He talks about just that 10% rule of just lopping off 10%. So if your word count is like floating at like 80,000 after you've written all that, cut 10% of that. Trim the fat, kill a lot of the words that don't add to the narrative or make your story better or that are just fluff. Because from my experience of writing, there's going to be a ton of fluff because you're dumping out of your own mind. So just keeping things simple, getting your words straight, figuring out, just making sure that your message is on target. But I love the beta readers section. I don't think that we can stress enough just the importance of having beta readers. And that's something we have to also stress is that you don't have to take all of their suggestions.
For sure. And actually what I was just thinking as you said that is I will pay attention. So I usually have somewhere between 5 to 7 beta readers per project on average. So what I will pay attention to is if there'll be somebody who will make a comment that's completely way out in left field and doesn't make any sense and frustrates me, and then other people that will have good comments. And so I'll kind of average them out. But one thing I do pay attention to, if more than one person comments, complains, or gets confused about something, then there's probably a problem.
There we go. Good rule of thumb.
So yeah, that's what I do. I'm like, okay, well, it's still my story. So just because so-and-so didn't like this particular thing a character did doesn't mean it's not a valid thing to leave in the book. But if that's the rule of thumb, if more than one person has a problem with it, then you probably need to reevaluate.
Change the approach. And then with beta readers, your beta readers can also serve as really your first Amazon reviewers. And then formatting. As someone who has a design background, I definitely can't speak enough about the need to make sure that your formatting looks good. And like you talked about before with the ebook using Scrivener is $45. You can invest that in yourself. It's definitely better than the alternative, which is the pain of Microsoft Word. I don't know about you, Kayla, but I've had documents completely crash out. I've had them corrupt. It is the worst feeling to have written and spent so much time in a document only to have it crash out, corrupt, and then you lose all those changes.
It's a bad deal. And to also add into the Scrivener discussion of they give, I think at least they used to give you a 30-day trial.
Yes. And
it only counts down days that you open it, so you can actually get longer than 30 days out of it sometimes. But you can get a really good feeling off of that 30-day trial.
And then, your book cover. You talked about, sourcing out the book cover, which is very important because you want your book cover to look as professional as possible because people judge books by covers. I don't care who says what. People will judge a book by its cover. You can have Nobel Prize level content inside your book. If the cover fails, you fail. It's not going to happen. People aren't going to read your book. Yep. So I would rather you have a dynamite cover and less than stellar content than have awesome content and a bad cover.
Yep. I agree 100%. You've definitely got to have that cover. And it's I'm not saying they don't exist, but it's a rare author that can create their own sexy cover and make it work. So, and for me, I think about, do I want to deal with the learning curve of making one when I could be writing the next book? So it makes sense for me to hire the cover artist and move on to writing the next book while she's working on the cover for the last book.
Yeah, no, totally. And you can go back to episode 3 of the podcast, and Tasha talks about how she found her cover artist on Pinterest. So you can find cover artists anywhere. Cover artists are anywhere you look for them. You can find them. Just make sure it's not your neighbor's nephew, which is always the go-to.
Right. And again, you get what you pay for. If you're trying to use your neighbor's nephew to get a freebie or whatever, it's probably going to look like it. And another way to find them is when my first cover artist wasn't available anymore, I emailed some authors whose covers I admired.
Yes.
And I knew that they were indie published authors that had obviously hired someone. And then I ended up hooking up with their artist, and she does a lovely job. And I've referred her many times. And that's the great thing about indie authors is they're so happy to share their resources with each other. So yeah, don't hesitate to email somebody if you're admiring their cover and find out who's doing their work for them.
Yeah, no, totally. Because you don't want to, do all this effort to write this book in 6 months only to fall short at the one thing that everybody's going to look at first, which is your cover. And do the research. Take time to look. Look, like you said, you found covers that you admired. Look at your genre. Look at what the covers are looking like. Look at the type of art that drives your genre. And then, do likewise. If it's successfully selling, New York Times bestsellers, there's no rule that you have to be original. I don't know where that always comes from, where I have to be the most original or come up with a great idea. Just copy the style, not the exact cover, but just copy the way that the words flow on the page, or the font types on the page, or the type of art that they use. It's okay.
Yeah, there's a reason it's working. And you know what was funny? When I sent out those emails, I think 3 out of the 4 people were using the same cover artist.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
There you go.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
Yeah. So, the one big thing, that we got to talk about next is, so you want to write this book in 6 months, and we've framed out what you need to do and how you need to do it and who you need to talk to. But there's one piece that we definitely need to touch on, which is the accountability part.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I know.
I think the accountability partner is huge, and finding the right one is huge. I've had lots of people say, I'm going to encourage you and hold you accountable, and like my best girlfriend and my husband and even my daughter. My daughter will kick my butt harder than anyone else, actually, so she's a pretty good one. But and actually be really disappointed in me and ask and question me as to why I'm not getting things done in a way only a child can. But some people, if they're too close to you emotionally, are like, well, you're struggling, maybe you should take a day off or back off, or they just want to comfort you, and so it makes it easy to not keep moving forward. Where if you have someone who understands the business and your ability and different things like that, they're going to push you harder because they know you can do it. It's more like having the basketball coach or the track coach that's not going to let you quit because they know what you can do, and they care more about you succeeding than your comfort. They're not going to break you, but they also are going to push you out of your comfort level.
Yeah, no, totally. It's like the old adage about, somewhere out there, someone is working, to take your place, and you have to work harder than they are to stay ahead of them. I think it was kind of an old basketball adage that Bill Bradley had come up with, because, he played ball, and he talked about just having to practice all the time because he didn't want someone to come up and just take his spot. And it's the same thing with writing. We have to keep writing because someone's going to come and publish something that is very similar to what we've got, or is going to be right along the line with what we've written, and they're going to beat us to the punch. So you definitely want to be diligent, not rush, but be in a hurry.
No.
Be in a hurry to get the book completed. Be in a hurry to get it to your audience, because your audience deserves it. Your audience wants it, but you need to be able to get yourself out there and position yourself in the market pretty much as quickly as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the accountability partner also makes sure you're not taking shortcuts.
Yes.
Like you were just saying, you can have the urgency, but not be rushing.
Right. And you want them to hold you accountable on the good days and the bad days. And if you can't find anybody, hire somebody. Find somebody.
Right.
I heard a great email this week. I got a great email this week from, he's a coach. His name's Mark Mawhinney. Shout out to Mark Mawhinney of Natural Born Coaches. But Mark said that he had a client this week, a coaching client this week, who was trying to figure out how to get things going and get his goals met. And he said, well, here's how you do it. He said, what I told him to do was to find a charity he absolutely hated. And if he didn't hit his goal, he had to make a donation to that charity. And so his charity, ironically, was the Ku Klux Klan. So he said, if I don't hit my goal, I have to make Yes, he said, if I don't hit my goal, I have to make a donation to the KKK. So think about something that you absolutely and completely hate. And if you don't hit your goal, then make a donation to that charity.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
it stresses me out just.
That's the thing, and I think that's it. If that doesn't motivate you, the fact that you're giving money to someone you hate, nothing will motivate you.
Yeah.
But
I feel like I don't know if it was Jeff Goins was maybe even talking about that here recently. I've been listening back through his archives, so maybe it was an old thing, but he was, and maybe it was somebody else, but they were talking about they actually had a check written and in an envelope addressed and stamped, and they gave it to their accountability partner. And when they said, if I don't call you on this day and say this book is done, put it in the mail, because you could cheat on your end. But he knew that they would drop that envelope.
Yeah, so I think whatever device you have to employ to make sure that you hit your goal, I definitely recommend you do it because writing a book is one of the most worthwhile things you'll probably ever do, and you won't regret doing it.
You will regret not doing it.
Yes, absolutely. So, whew. So hopefully we didn't scare you away from your goal of writing a book next year. Hopefully the ideas are still swirling around in your head and you're ready to go. But we definitely believe that to write a successful book, you have to have a plan and you have to have a timeline and you have to apply those action steps. So basically, sit down this weekend, look over 2017, put down your deadline on the calendar, and then work backwards. When do you need to see the book designer? When do you need to see the beta readers? When do you need to see your editor and proofreader? When do you need to have your manuscript done? What is going to be your writing pace? Think about all those things and start putting that stuff on the calendar. Work backwards. Then find an accountability partner to hand that off to and say, hey, look, I want you to hold me accountable. This book is going to be done on such and such a date. Can you make sure that I get that done? So, hey, it's an exciting undertaking. And we're here for you. If you have any questions or comments, definitely post them on the post here. Or if you want to ask specific questions about nonfiction to me, you can hit me at chris@readywritelaunch.com. I'm also on Twitter at Chris Jones Inc. And if you want to chat fiction with Kayla, where can they find you?
They can find me at Kayla at KaylaDawnThomas.com and on Twitter at KaylaDawnWrites.
Awesome. So happy writing. Good luck. 2017 is going to be your year to write your first book. And we'll see you next time.